Apparently I need to start this at 12:14 because it takes time to actually start the broadcast. I remember, just everything's learning. It's all wonderful learning. Okay, and so then I'm gonna close that, and we are live. Hello, Facebook and beyond. Welcome to the Union, engaging conversations about personal growth. We all know each other, and in order to keep your interest, we're going to jump right in. The topic today is the intersection of self-esteem and purpose, or how one's self-esteem might affect their feeling about their purpose. Would be maybe a slightly more narrow view. So what I want to do is just go around and get started with your take on that, just something brief, and I'll kind of moderate the discussion today, but we'll talk about maybe what it means to you or what your viewpoint is, and I'll give you a couple minutes, and if you get wordy, I'm going to cut you off, just so you know. Who's going to start? Let's see. Ladies first. Katie.
Hi. You want me to answer the question about what purpose and self-esteem means to me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. There's a lot here. Self-esteem is a relationship for me. It's a relationship that I have with myself and the climate of that relationship, be it, now at age 35, we've been through a lot together. We've grown a lot together. And purpose is something that I feel in touch with when that relationship feels generally in tune and kind and compassionate. It feels like an easy awareness for me to have that in the past. I think it's evolved and changed over the years. It feels more solid today, and I assume it'll be more solid in 20 years from now. So.
One can hope.
Yeah.
Mr. The McLean, what are your thoughts on the matter?
How much time do I have? Like 90 seconds, probably, right? No, I'm actually serious.
I know you are. You're burning your clock.
For me, self-esteem has two components. One is your knowledge of your efficacy. Knowledge is important to historical records. The other is your worthiness of receiving, or your self-respect. So there's self-efficacy and self-respect. And I think a lot of those two get collapsed. And when you're living your purpose, or hoping to live your purpose, or desiring to live your purpose, the more you can distinguish those two as separate, the more velocity you'll move in the world, and the less you'll head about whether or not you should be serving in a grand way or playing a big game. I don't think you can separate the two, purpose and self-esteem. I think are required to have a profound relationship with each other. And most people have that efficacy and worthiness collapsed. We'll talk about how that shows up for my clients.
That's good. I texted you, but check your mic. I don't know that it's on because you get a really nice new mic to be things with, and sounds. Mr. Carlton, you got a windscreen on yours. I mean, we know we're dealing with real professionals.
That's right. I can say pizza piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, and it's totally seamless.
Go ahead.
Okay. I'm going to make a distinction between two different things, slightly different two different things than Jason did. And I kind of think about self-esteem. There's self-esteem, and then there's rapport with self. And I think those two things get collapsed. And self-esteem is something which you build as a result of doing esteemable acts, right? Of doing things in the world and teaching yourself that you can contribute to the world. So that's self-esteem. But equally important is rapport with self, which is just your awareness of your God-given, life-given value, right? Just like your existential value, completely independent from any acts that you do. And I think one of the things that's interesting about the intersection with purpose is when we're not feeling on purpose, we can use that we can try and reduce our experience of rapport with self in an effort to motivate ourselves to get on purpose so that we can then increase our self-esteem. And there's this kind of toxic spiral downwards. And so what I advocate is like, you really, really want to start with a baseline of rapport with self before you even worry about purpose and before you worry about doing acts in the world. And then those two things come later. So that's my soundbite.
Damn. Mr. McLean, your mic is working super well now. You're very efficient. Awesome. I honestly I don't know if I have much to add. I mean, we talk about the idea of self-esteem. Most people, they just get so deep in on persecution, I think, is kind of the thing. I think Katie and I are very aligned on this particular idea. And it is the opportunities there are, vastly different as far as like what Robbie was talking about. I love that notion of like your intrinsic value being the like origin, the source of your self-esteem. I was thinking more along the lines of like, how does one impact the other, right? Because as Katie was saying, how are we in the world is greatly impacted by how we think of ourselves, right? And so I think that is how I'd like to kind of aim the conversation. And I think at this point, we could just kind of have it as a free-for-all. It doesn't need to be super moderated. And then I'm going to set a timer for 5 minutes, and we'll take a break, and we'll introduce ourselves to whomever might be watching. About 15 minutes in, and then we'll keep going. Does that sound good to everybody?
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a funny thing because so for me, one of the places that this intersects is I'm super clear on my purpose at this point, right? Like what I'm meant to be out in the world is someone who is working with individuals mostly, but the idea of superseding people's conditioning and helping everyone understand what is possible when you actually step outside of your conditioning to create deeper shift.
Can you say what you mean by conditioning?
Mostly what I mean is the traits, behaviors, viewpoints, ideas, values, belief systems that we develop inside of our family system at a very, very, very young age. It mostly is pre-verbal. Although it happens in stages throughout the course of early adult, all the way through early adulthood. But it is essentially the unconscious auto program, the autopilot that runs us on a day-to-day, moment-to-moment, second-by-second basis. That's what I mean by it.
Thank you. I don't, Rob.
Yeah,
Robbie, I don't know.
Finish my point, which is simply that. On the days or moments when when my self-esteem wavers in some form, regardless of whether it's efficacy, whether I don't know if I'm capable of doing this one particular thing, or if it's worth, where I am not clear, if my value in the world is, enough to have me affect something positive as a result of knowing my purpose, that is. It's undermining in some way, shape, or form, and conversely, yes, sir, yes. Conversely, is propelling in the other direction. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. I'm actually glad you finished because that makes it even more of a perfect setup. And Robbie, I think sometimes it's just definitions. 90% of philosophy is defining your terms, and every human being is a philosopher. And I'd like to distinguish between value and worth. I think, value is set by so many variables, and this goes along with self-efficacy, like whether or not you stay up to date with your continuing education, whether or not you know how to market yourself, whether or not you're actually providing value to people that they're willing to give money for. I think, and that's always variable. It's flexible. It's changing all the time. It goes up and down depending on where you live and what you can provide and all that. I think self-worth is universal. And we all have the same worth. We're all, manifestations of the divine. We all have priceless worth. Our value, though, changes all the time. And the key is, like, you have to build your sense of value from my perspective. I'm saying it could be just different definitions, but worth is just a matter of acceptance. Like, you just have to accept whether it's you're a child of God or you're a hologram of the universe or whatever it is. Like, that we all have priceless worth, which is why we send money to distant places to help people we've never met, or strangers, run into buildings that are burning to get cats. As sentient beings, we all have universal priceless self-worth, but our value just depends on what we're thinking.
Imperative of accepting your worth.
It really is it's sort of like, what do they say about enlightenment? Although this isn't true, you have to meditate 20 years to even get to this perspective. But I like trying to get enlightened is like trying to get a left foot that you already have. And I think accepting your own worth, your priceless worth, and holding yourself as divine is sort of like that. And then you just have to learn how to market to get value or provide value to the world. I think those two things are different.
You addressed that to me, so I'm going to respond. And the way that you said it made me imagine that you heard me say something different to that. But what I heard, I'm like, oh yeah. No. That's exactly. Well, it's mostly exactly how I see it. And then I get curious: is there I definitely the distinction I want to make is between that thing which is intrinsic and requires recognition, but that's all that it requires.
I think that's the acceptance of the divinity part. Like, I don't think we disagree. Like I said, I think it's just different terms.
Yeah. What I'm interested in what you said, and I don't know if this is a rabbit hole that we want to go down, but I'm just going to say it because this is what has my interest, is like, okay, so there's value.
Right.
But isn't your value always completely dependent on the context? So
absolutely.
You don't have like a value that goes up and down over time. You have a value which is dependent on whatever context you're in. So
I think it's both. I think you have value dependent on the context you're in, but it also in that
Okay, hang on. All right, so
we'll talk later, Robbie.
Right, so full disclosure, these two have a lot of integral background, and so they can for sure just spiral dynamics themselves into their own conversation for 2 hours.
One more thing, Robbie, I recognize you as a genius.
Thank you.
Now you're recognized. I noticed on Facebook your position is an unrecognized genius. I just want to recognize you.
But thank you. I'll make sure to update that.
There's some value context for you. Katie, do you have any thoughts that came up while these two are thoroughly enjoying themselves?
Yeah, the words are kind of going over my head in terms of like value and worth and things like that. I'm thinking of my own story and the stories of lots of people that I've worked with over the years. I feel like my purpose has changed over time because my self-esteem has changed. In my early years, I knew from the time I was in 7th grade that I wanted to be a therapist, right? And of course, what was behind that was probably pretty codependent, like trying to fix things, trying to fix myself, probably trying to build a self-esteem. And, over time, I definitely have landed in my purpose in a different way, where there's like a deeper connection with the bigger thing. It's not from me trying to get something for myself, trying to externally satisfy things that aren't whole in myself yet. And so but what's interesting is that purpose that I sought for, years of college and lots of classes and so many books and so many conversations, that was actually helping me build. It's like the esteemable acts, like that was actually helping me build self-esteem as I landed more in my purpose, from a more centered spirit, like more spiritually centered, basically. I don't know if that made sense.
Well, I think that makes perfect sense. I have a similar experience around like having an anchor into purpose that I didn't really understand from about, more than a decade ago. That then through this kind of, I came from generally a place of lack. And so, so much of this work was around like fixing myself or, there's like some way that I've got to be better than I am. And, and it was a pretty constant thing for a long time. But my purpose, like the thing that I wanted to do, the thing that I wanted to offer the world never changed. And then what changed was my relationship to myself and my understanding of what I'm capable of, what feels good, where I stand, all those pieces that had me, that my self-esteem changed to the degree. And so there's the efficacy, I do really love the two kind of prongs of efficacy and worth that Jason talks about. And, that efficacy piece has been in place for a really long time. Like this is just something I've always done. I've always been good at it. I've always talked to people, like that thing has always been there. But getting to that place where I really believed that it mattered on a much larger scale than just trading my attention for my friends' approval or trading my attention or my listening skills for some attention from a woman or, those kinds of pieces slowly sloughed off like, really thick layers. And that reveals this thing. It's like, oh, not only am I good at this, but it's really important that I'm doing it. So that is the relationship there for me.
Also, Katie, I don't think one can separate purpose, true purpose, from spirit, from spirituality. I think it always is tapped there. You can separate mission from spirituality, but not purpose. So yes, it made perfect sense to me. That's my point.
Thank you.
This actually feels like a. Oh, go ahead. Make your. Yeah.
Well, I was gonna start a new question for you guys and kind of like a little chess. I don't know if you want to do a pause. Maybe this is a good pause.
Yeah, I think it felt like a good break point. We can just do a quick who you are, what you do round, and get back to the conversation. I'll go around my screen, which is Robbie first.
Okay, I'm Robbie Carlton. There is no E in my second name, so Zoom is lying right now. But
for a decade, folks. My phone.
Really, that's been in there the whole time. Yeah, I've done a lot of things. The thing that I'm doing currently, which is relevant to this, is I make a podcast called "How to Be an OK Person," and we talk about things like this.
Awesome, thank you. Spelling corrected, Mr. McLean.
No, thank you. I'll go last.
Ever the control problem.
He won't sit. He won't roll over. He won't beg. He's a bad dog.
I'm the middle child growing up, so I'll be in the middle. I belong in that spot. I'm cool there. That's another that was another self-esteem that affected it. Anyway, I'm Kate Weiner, and I am a therapist. I own a private practice for therapy called Healing Austin Therapy. I office in Westlake. I'm also a life coach, trained by One Taste, and I right now this year, what I love doing is helping women reconnect with their bodies, their body image, their self-esteem, and help them basically see beauty differently, which means that we all have it. Doesn't look a certain way.
Awesome. I hope you get to talk more about that later because I love what you've been doing. I'm actually going to go last, so go ahead, Mr. McLean.
Okay, fine. My name is Jason McLean. My friends often call me The McLean. Starbucks calls me Rumpelstiltskin, REMPLESTILSKIN. I'm tired of them teasing me about that. I've been studying transformational models for 27 years now. I'm 46, just to give you some context. It's not and my awakening occurred in prison because I didn't go to college. I went to prison instead. I used to steal brand new sports cars out of car lots for fun. And somebody doing life handed me a book called Awaken the Giant Within by Tony Robbins. And there's lots of gritty details, but mostly I've just been about freeing people and giving them the skills to, like bolt on the skills and free the emotional, like the mental game that they have. And yeah, so I vacillate between teaching coaches how to build their business and talking about stuff that very few people can understand. But the three of you can, which is great. Hopefully somebody listening can. But the backbone of my work is integral theory. And a lot of, I've been an NLP master practitioner back when that used to mean something. And it was just the practitioner training was 6 months long. Now they're like 10 days or something, or 7. They're just assembly lines. Practitioner, master practitioner, trainer, all by the age of 25. So I spend my time now trying to figure out how to market ego development and self-esteem, and without saying that we're talking about those things, because if you have the worst thing to talk about with somebody who has self-esteem issues is self-esteem. So you have to sort of back your way into it.
Cutting you off.
What's that?
I'm going to cut you off. You're like 4 minutes into an intro, man.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, I want us to keep going. So I'll just say quickly, my name is Keith Palino. And right now I am working with individuals to basically long-term coaching relationships to deconstruct conditioning that is holding you back and putting something in place that will have you living a fulfilling life in a whole new way. So,
would you talk longer, please?
No, sir.
I'd like you to talk for 3 more minutes.
He just wants permission.
We can certainly go over time a little bit, but
no.
Keep to the schedule.
I just want to know what the time limit is in advance.
Yes.
Which I think I requested. I know you too well, actually. I wish we didn't know each other so well.
Yeah. Anyway, Robbie, you were about to, share and ask a question. I thought maybe that would be a good jumping off point.
Yeah. So this is kind of on the purpose end of the spectrum. Like what I'm noticing, listening to you guys, is, well, I'll notice the difference in myself, and then I'll share what a common thread I hear with you guys. My experience of purpose is very, very much an experience of what a mutual friend of ours, Ken Blackman, calls Funktionlust, which is a German word which means like the lust for your function. So it's like this experience of I'm doing the thing I was built to do. Yeah. And when I have that experience, like that's what I label as purpose. And I have that experience in like several different contexts. There's like a lot of different ways that shows up. What there isn't for me is a sense so much of like a grander mission on the planet that I'm trying to serve. And I don't know if this is a typological difference. There's definitely type systems that would say that some people experience the world through that lens, others don't. Or it's like something that I haven't figured out in myself. But what I notice is a difference between that experience of like, I know when I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, the lights come on. And the lights come on for me, and the lights come on for the people I'm interacting with. And that's what I mean when I say purpose. And it both kind of comes out of self-esteem and it increases it, like it fuels self-esteem. So it's this virtuous cycle. And for all three of you in different ways, I've heard like that there is also this sense, maybe that part is in there, but there's also this sense of like a grander mission that you're serving. And I'm just really curious about that difference. And if that fits for you, I mean, maybe that isn't how it is, or yeah.
What difference?
The difference between experiencing a larger mission or not experiencing a larger mission.
Versus purpose, though, is what on the planet, like, Could you say more about that? I want to understand.
I think I get it. I speak to it. Maybe that'll help.
Okay.
I started working the 12-step programs somewhere like 7.5 years ago. And this concept of higher power came up. And for me, it wasn't religious. I was not raised in a religious way. So for me, my higher power is nature. And so when I look in nature, it's like everything has a purpose. Like everything just naturally balances itself out. And when I apply that metaphor, it's like watching the Discovery Channel or National Geographic, you see like some awful, atrocious, scary things happening, but it's like it's balancing. It's the earth balancing itself out. And so applying that idea to people, it's like, okay, I can see that we all have a purpose. We all have kind of the way that we were hardwired was meant to strike some kind of a balance. And looking at myself, and then it's harder looking at yourself, because I think working with myself and working with other people, it's like sometimes they're like, I don't want to be that person, though. I don't want to serve that purpose. Like I don't want to be destructive, and I don't want to be a like emotional, volatile person, or like I don't want to be boring. I don't want people to see me as boring. That's usually me. Like people hear my voice, they're like monotone, and like, but I slow things down and I smooth out and I like calm the air. And so and that for me in a big way is like that intersection of purpose and self-esteem. It's like, can I accept who I am and what I was designed to do on this planet?
And like extend that sentence, part of what I hear is like, and the difference between that and maybe what we're told is like who you're supposed to be, right? Like that there are certain purposes that are considered like the good ones, and we're all supposed to be doing that one. And if you're not doing that one, then like just try and get that, right? As opposed to what I'm hearing from you, Katie, is like actually that acceptance. Yeah, I love that. I actually felt your soothing impact as you were speaking.
Yeah.
Katie's very soothing and very safe.
It's true.
Mr. Chief Sitting Pretty Horse.
I don't know that I have much to like. The thing that came to mind while you were talking is the Gurdjieff community story, where like there's this one member of this Gurdjieff community, and he's just like the guy everyone like. He's just annoying. He's irritable. He rubs everyone off the wrong way the whole time, and he's just terrible. You know, and then Gurdjieff goes away for some period of time, unknown to the story. And while he's gone, they all kind of get together and they're like, let's get, we're going to get rid of him. And so they like vote and whatever, and they deliver the sentence, and you're on your way out of town, pal. You're done here. We've had it. And so, like the story is Gurdjieff is kind of on his way back to wherever they are, and he sees the guy, on the road headed. He's like, "Where are you going?" He's like, "Oh, they ran me off." And so he's like, "All right, come back with me." And he comes back to the group, and he's like, "You guys are idiots. Like, I hired this guy specifically to cause friction so that you don't get too comfortable, so that you don't, just see yourselves in this great light. That these are a reflection and a mirror." So that is like, so I think, Rob, you're speaking to kind of like that it like that undercover innate purpose thing versus like, I think, and Jason, you made a distinction with mission and purpose too, right? Which is like, we like to see ourselves as having this mission. And then maybe, and would you agree that like function loose would maybe be the maybe even just the intersection of those two things, where who innately you are is the thing that is your mission?
I like that. Yeah, I think, maybe we got that. But I'm still interested in the difference between that, because an alligator is in its function loose 24/7.
Yeah.
but it's not aware of serving a greater good.
So I'd actually like to talk about purpose for 90 seconds, Keith, or 120. Is that? Yeah. Okay. Go. So when I work with clients around purpose, and this is separate from self-esteem because they really can't even handle or sequential from self-esteem. Purpose, you're probably already doing it. Whether you're marketing it or not, you're probably already doing it. It's probably those moments in your life when you felt like, like everything is just aligned, everything's right, everything's good. But there are some things I think are important distinctions around purpose. First, it should be universal. It should be about other, capital O, like the planet, like it should transcend context, essentially. So it's not like I'm going to help women, blah, blah, like that's a mission. It's awesome. Or I'm going to help men, blah, blah, blah. That's amazing. That's a mission. I'm going to feed the hungry. That's great. That's a mission. It's not a purpose. A purpose is to, have everybody on the planet not experience, food scarcity. Like that's a purpose. So I think that purpose transcends context. It's always about other, you're probably already doing it. And it's the thing that if you admit it, it probably scares the shit out of you if you don't have enough self-esteem.
Nice way to bring it back.
Mm-hmm.
That's very nice. So we're slightly over our time. Do we want to do like last words and
how about we keep going? I mean, until the conversations, or do you have a thing?
I mean,
what happened to the whole I want to be feminine around time and have it flow? Come on. Oh, sorry. That was a private conversation. My apologies, Keith.
We already are.
Y'all, 2 minutes. We are definitely feminine on time. I mean, this is a rich conversation.
Who else? You want to? I'm going to relinquish control and do we want to? Why does your video keep going out? That's annoying. Yeah, I'm not saying we have to end, and I do want to be conscious of time and the commitment that I asked for from the wonderful people who are who's doing things with his power supply.
You asked me why I'm muting the video. Would you like to see all of this happen?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that more entertaining? Okay, great.
I think the McLean's purpose is something around irreverence.
No, it's just a theme.
Which has a very valuable purpose, by the way. That is a very valuable purpose.
I'm sure it does. It often doesn't serve, though, the capital O other.
By definition. Rob, shall we name each other's purpose? That'd be good.
I'm curious.
How about we just say what we think our purpose is and not have other people? Because how could they possibly know what our moments of when we felt the most right in our life were? Thanks for nodding.
That's
compassionately yet also condescendingly, Keith. I appreciate that.
That's actually relevant. So the difference between the impact of perception, other external perception versus internal perception, and is how important is our impact and how we're perceived in the world, and how does that impact our self-esteem and our purpose, right?
Okay, good. I think that's an amazing question. So I think there's a couple of things that go on there. First of all, because I'm so irreverent, thank you, Kate Weiner. I have long explored, and when I say long, I mean since for 19 years now, the line between self-expression and responsibility with listening, Landmark Education would call it, or I like to say I'm 100% responsible for my experience, and so are you. But I'm also 100% responsible for my results with you. And if I am irreverent too much, and McLean's version of irreverent usually expands the boundaries of what's possible in terms of irreverence, then I'm probably not producing great results with you. And I think that's actually the way to manage that. I think a lot of people are like, I want to be myself. That's awesome. You totally can. Sometimes it's irresponsible to be yourself. And I think it's an important line. As long as you understand that results, meaning efficacy, are separate from worthiness of receiving or what it means about you, personal and practical, then you won't get into any trouble. If you do that, if you collapse those two, then you'll beat yourself up about that social interaction. You won't take it as just simple feedback. And a lot of people shame themselves, and shame is absolutely unnecessary. It also gives guilt a bad name. When you violate your own value system, that's guilt. That's a good thing. It's sort of it feels like adrenaline rush, like you're getting zinged down your spinal cord is how I experience guilt. Most people have that collapse for shame, which is that heavy, oppressive, like, oh, I'm therefore a bad person. And I think that those things need to be distinguished out. I don't even know what I was talking about now, so I'm going to stop.
Your experience of the feedback loop, when you're out in the world and you're doing your thing, and as people who are strong. I mean, we are strong personalities. We try and put ourselves farther out in the world than most people, and invariably you violate someone's sense of propriety or something like that. What's your experience with that feedback loop, and how does it impact the thing you're talking about?
Yeah, one of the things that I run into with that is I've spent a lot of time and I've spent a lot of my energy putting attention on other people and penetrating through to the thing that's going on. I'm a therapist, so it's there's 3 layers underneath what you see is going on that seems to be going on. And I can sometimes see that really clearly. Sometimes I see something that does not feel true to that other person, but being able to see that and saying that, or sharing what I see there, can sometimes have that impact. People are like, A, I didn't want to hear that. B, I don't think that's true at all. And C, I hate you, and I feel shame inside myself now. So it's like the impact of trying to be of purpose can definitely cause conflict. Whew. I've done that. I've done that.
And then how are you impacting? What happens for you there as someone who's trying to be a force of good in the world?
Is that a question?
It is. What happens for you when you have that experience of kind of violating?
Oh yeah. Oh, it depends. Sometimes I can stay with myself and be like, I did the best I could. I was well-meaning. I will learn from this experience, and other times I'm like, oh, I did a bunch of harm.
For me, it's a practical matter when that happens. We, as masters of what we do, I look at clients as a jigsaw puzzle, and sometimes you've built out enough of the frame to fit in the piece that you're trying to drop in. And sometimes there's no place for it to land. You're trying to drop the middle piece in when enough of the board hasn't been built in, and it just doesn't land. And so I think one of the things that I always have an eye on is, when can they hear the thing I see? And sometimes that's 6 sessions out, or 8. And sometimes I get proven wrong, which I love because it means I've learned something. But it's actually that day. But typically it's not. And I think we have to, gauge that. But if we, again, personal, practical, we want to, it's feedback. Personal is, I did a bad thing. And I think that everybody experiences some degree of that. But shame, it's funny, I wrote this thing back when there was a whole sort of thread going on Facebook around sexual shame, shaming sluts, and which I don't want to talk about sluts right now, but I think they should not only be not shamed, but rewarded and upheld and blessed and encouraged. Meaning, when I say slut, I mean a woman who's empowered for her own sex. That's awesome. And shame requires your consent. So there's a part of them that's not right about themselves if somebody calls them a slut and they mean it in a shameful way rather than in a acknowledgement way like I do, then that means that they're not right around their own sex. Now, you can't say that. They have to get that. But I think this idea about, shame and it requiring consent brings our validation back internally, which is true self-esteem, and not having it externally referenced, which means what do people think about me, and confusing that with self-esteem. Nobody can harm your self-esteem. Nobody can. That's other esteem. And that once we get internally validated, but still externally referenced for results, that's the key to this whole self-esteem and purpose thing, I think.
That is a whole nother, that is a really rich conversation in and of itself.
And by the way, that is my final word. Thank you.
That's good. Robbie, did you wanna chime in here? I think we are gonna come to a close just to.
Yeah, I have to jump off in like literally 1 minute. And yeah, give me the prompt again. I'll say something.
The feedback loop of, kind of accidentally violating as a teacher or a coach.
Yeah, I don't think I'm like, am I just not being like itchy enough or like honest enough or something? I don't get that much like static. Typically it's a lot of so I'm when you say feedback loop, what's interesting, what caught my attention is the ways that like I could know that what I was doing was lighting me up. And so like if I had like 100% pure self-esteem from birth, I would have just followed that my whole life. But it actually also required hearing from other people, hey, that thing you're doing, it's lighting me up, over and over again, for me to kind of trust that in me enough to also be able to follow it, right? And to gradually build like, okay, it's not just me that thinks this is cool. Other people think this is cool too. So it's like, I'm thinking of like the other side of the feedback of like that, the kind of thumbs up feedback, and how indispensable that is actually. Like, I think it's a fantasy that we could just sit and meditate by ourselves and come to this conclusion about what our purpose is, and then go out into the world and give it to people, and it just works, right? Like it's right. Like it's a conversation, so I think that's what I would say. And maybe I'm going to try being a little like racier next time I'm coaching someone.
Robbie, by the way, I've had conflicts, meaning tension in a session with client, and I've had 457 clients through 6-month programs. 2 times I had tension in a session, and every single time it was because it was about me and what I wanted for them, and not about them. So I view what you just said as you're just being fully in service of them. I think the whole, like, if I'm triggering them, I'm doing a good job, is a failed coaching model that comes from arrogance and ego, not about service. So I'm glad you never experienced that. I think it's a sign of your elegance.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm still curious about like maybe being a little stronger. I have to jump off right now, you guys. I have another thing I have to get to. This has been super fun.
And so since we didn't do like a closing round, please do go on the video and put in links to the things that you want people to be able to reach you. That being said, thank you everyone for joining us today, and join us next week, Tuesday, 12:15 Central Time. Thank you, and goodbye.
Thanks, Keith.
Yeah, thank you.